picture this. A young Maria Callas arrives in Athens, and what's she clutching? Not sheet music, not a fancy dress, but a doll.
A doll.
Yeah, it's a detail that really jumped out at me from Arianna Huffington's biography, Maria Callas, the woman behind the legend. And it kind of hints at these layers, beneath the surface of this icon, this iconic and, let's be honest, often troubled artist. Welcome to the Mad Genius Thesis, where we dig into the age-old question.
Is there a link between creativity and
mental illness?
Mental illness.
Exactly. And today we're using Callas's life as our lens to examine that question.
Fascinating choice.
So Huffington really dives into Callas's difficult childhood.
Yeah.
She was born into a family that was desperate for a son.
I see.
And Maria faced just open rejection from her mother, who clearly favored her older sister, Jackie.
Wow, so there's that sense of not belonging right from the start.
Yeah, and the book even quotes Maria's mother's first words upon seeing her take her away.
Ooh, that's
pretty harsh, right?
Yeah, that's heavy stuff. I mean, that kind of early trauma, that feeling of being unwanted, can have a profound impact on anyone's developing psyche.
It really makes you wonder if that early rejection is what fueled her drive to overachieve.
Yeah.
It's almost like she had to prove her worth to the world through her art.
It's definitely a compelling theory, and it's a pattern we see in a lot of artists' lives. This desperate need for validation, for recognition that pushes them to extraordinary heights.
But even with all the chaos of this difficult childhood, there was a glimmer of hope for Maria, her vocal coach, Elvira de Hidalgo. Yeah, and she was more than just a teacher. She was a mentor, a guiding force who recognized not only Maria's raw talent,
right,
but also her deep-seated need for guidance and support.
So crucial, that mentorship, especially for someone navigating those choppy emotional waters.
Absolutely. It makes you think about the role mentors play in artists' lives in general, but especially those who might be struggling, with emotional turbulence.
Yeah, because a good mentor provides not just technical training, but emotional support, a sense of belonging, and that all-important validation that might be missing elsewhere in an artist's life.
And for Maria, who is constantly battling insecurities stemming from her childhood, that validation must have been just invaluable.
Oh, absolutely. It's about nurturing not just the talent, but the whole person.
Right. Exactly. Now, this is where things get even more interesting. World War II erupts. Athens is occupied. There are food shortages, constant fear. But for Maria, this period becomes a crucible, a test of her resilience.
A crucible? How so?
Well, it's fascinating how her voice actually becomes a tool for survival, a way to secure food and even protection from occupying forces.
Interesting.
Huffington recounts how Maria would actually sing for Italian and German soldiers, captivating them with her voice.
Wow, so she's literally using her art to survive.
Yeah, it's almost like she weaponized her art to navigate this incredibly dangerous world, and this is where Maria's fierce determination really shines through. And speaking of determination, let's talk about the rise of the diva. Maria's career explodes onto the world stage.
Yeah.
Her voice is technically brilliant, of course.
Oh, of course.
But what truly sets her apart is that emotional intensity. Her willingness to delve into these dark corners of the human psyche and bring those emotions to life through her singing.
She's not just hitting the notes, she's embodying the character.
Right, exactly. She wasn't just hitting the notes, she was embodying the characters, pouring her soul into every performance. And it makes you wonder, is this depth of feeling something we see more often in artists who have faced these significant personal challenges? Does that turmoil somehow translate into artistic power?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a question that's been debated for centuries, and there's no easy answer.
Right.
But in Maria's case, it's hard to ignore the connection between her tumultuous life and her ability to convey such raw emotion on stage. It's like she channeled her own pain, her own longing into her art.
And then love enters the picture. Maria marries Giovanni Battista Meneghini, a much older, wealthy industrialist. Is a genuine affection, a need for security, a strategic alliance. The book kind of paints this complex picture of their relationship.
I see a lot of layers there.
Yeah, and what's interesting here is that tension between Maria's need for control, which she undoubtedly had on stage,
right,
and her vulnerability off stage. Meneghini provided stability, but also exerted a certain amount of control over her life. And this need for control versus that desire for love and connection It seems to be a recurring theme in Maria's life.
Absolutely. And it all comes to a head with the arrival of Aristotle Onassis.
Onassis.
This whirlwind romance captivates the world. Maria transforms herself, shedding a dramatic amount of weight, abandoning her career, and diving headfirst into Onassis's world of luxury and, let's be honest, infidelity.
It's like something straight out of a Greek tragedy, wouldn't you say? I mean, here she is at the pinnacle of her career, and she walks away from it all for this all-consuming passion. Did it liberate her, or did she lose herself in the process?
That's the question, isn't it? On one hand, she's experiencing this passionate love affair, but on the other, she's sacrificing her art, the very thing that defined her. It's almost as if she traded one form of control for another.
And that brings us to the final act of Maria's life. Breakdown and isolation. Onassis breaks her heart by marrying Jackie Kennedy. Her voice begins to deteriorate and she retreats from the world.
This is where that whole mad genius idea gets really complicated, right? Did the emotional turmoil fuel her early brilliance, or did it ultimately contribute to her downfall? It's almost a cautionary tale, about the price of fame and the fragility of artistic passion.
Yeah, there's this really poignant anecdote in the book about a gala dinner in Maria's honor. Even surrounded by all these admirers, she seems withdrawn and insecure, almost like a ghost of her former self. It's heartbreaking.
It really is. And you can't help but wonder, did those years of intense emotional output, that constant outpouring of her soul on stage, did it take a toll on her mental and physical well-being? Was there a point where the passion that fueled her art became too much to bear?
It's so interesting how Huffington highlights this constant duality in Maria's personality. This need for control, battling against a surrender to emotion.
It's a theme that echoes throughout her life, right? On stage, she was a force of nature, demanding perfection from herself and everyone around her. But off stage, she was often insecure, vulnerable, easily swayed by those she loved. It's like these two sides of her were constantly at war.
It's like she had these two distinct personas, the commanding diva and the fragile woman. And maybe that internal conflict, that tension between those two sides of herself was part of what fueled her artistic brilliance.
It's possible, right? Maybe those who can tap into such raw emotion, who can channel their own pain and vulnerability into their art, are also the ones who are most susceptible to the darker sides of those emotions.
It's interesting how Maria's need for approval and validation, that deep-seated insecurity stemming from her childhood, it seems to have followed her throughout her life. It played out in her relationships, her battles with opera houses, her constant need to control every aspect of her performances.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder if those early wounds ever truly heal, or if they just shape the way we navigate the world, the way we love, the way we create.
It's like she was fighting this losing battle against those inner demons.
And maybe that's the point. Maybe the struggle, I.S. the art. Maybe it's that tension between the light and shadow within us that gives birth to something truly extraordinary.
So where does this leave us in our quest to understand the mad genius? Have we arrived at any definitive answers?
I don't think there are easy answers when it comes to the human psyche, especially when you're dealing with something as complex as genius. But I think by examining these lives, these stories of individuals who pushed the boundaries of human experience, we can at least gain a deeper understanding of the forces that shape creativity and the potential costs that come with it.
And Maria Callas' story is a powerful reminder that even the most celebrated individuals are often grappling with these inner demons, and that the pursuit of artistic excellence can be a double-edged sword.
It's a reminder that genius isn't a simple equation, but rather this messy, often painful journey of self-discovery and expression. And in the case of Maria Callas, it was a journey that left an indelible mark on the world of opera and continues to fascinate us decades later.
It's striking how much Maria's life mirrors those tragic heroines she portrayed on stage. The love, the betrayal, the loss, it's all there in her art and her personal life. Did those roles, those characters she inhabited so completely, did they offer her a way to process her own emotional turmoil?
It's a compelling thought, isn't it? It's almost as if she was using art to exercise her personal demons, to give voice to the pain she couldn't express in her own life. Maybe that's part of what made her performances so electrifying.
She wasn't just acting, she was channeling her own experiences, her own vulnerabilities into those roles.
Right.
And audiences could feel that authenticity, that raw emotionality.
It's what set her apart from other singers. She wasn't just hitting the notes, she was bearing her soul.
We've talked about this duality in Maria's personality. On one hand, there's this need for control, this iron will that propelled her to the top of the opera world. And then there's this almost paradoxical surrender to emotion, both on stage and in her personal life.
It's as though those two forces were constantly pushing and pulling at her, shaping her art and ultimately her destiny.
It's like she poured all of that inner turmoil, that constant push and pull into her art. And the result was something truly unforgettable, even if it ultimately came at a heavy price.
It's that complexity, that tension between brilliance and fragility that makes Maria Callas such an enduring figure. Her story challenges us to confront that messy, often contradictory nature of genius.
It raises questions about the relationship between creativity and suffering, about the sacrifices artists make in pursuit of their art, and about that fine line between passion and self-destruction.
And ultimately, it leaves us pondering that age-old question, does great art require great suffering? Or is that just a romantic myth we tell ourselves to make sense of these extraordinary and often tragic lives of artists like Maria Callas?
It's a question that has haunted us for centuries, and one that we may never fully answer. But I think by exploring the lives of artists like Callas, by delving into their struggles and triumphs, we can at least begin to grapple with that complex and often contradictory nature of creative genius.
And perhaps in doing so, we can come to a deeper appreciation not only for their art, but for the human spirit that drives it.
Well said. Maria Callas's life was this whirlwind of passion, ambition, and ultimately tragedy. But her artistry continues to inspire and move us, reminding us of the transformative power of music and the complexities of the human experience.
And perhaps that's the most enduring legacy of the Mad Genius, to challenge our perceptions, to push the boundaries of artistic expression, and to leave us grappling with questions that have no easy answers.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but there's always more to explore. We encourage you to dive deeper into Maria Callas's life and music, and to ponder the questions we've raised about the nature of genius and the connection between creativity and mental illness.
And as always, we welcome your thoughts and insights. Let us know what resonated with you and what questions you're left with. The conversation continues.
You know, it's amazing how Maria's story, even with all its ups and downs, still connects with so many people, even today. Decades after she's gone. What is it about her life and her art that keeps us so fascinated?
I think it's those very ups and downs you mentioned, that mix of brilliance and vulnerability. It's captivating. You see this incredible talent, this drive to succeed, but at the same time, this deep insecurity and this longing for love and acceptance. It's a very human story, one that I think we can all relate to in our own struggles and hopes.
And really challenges those simple ideas we have about genius.
Right.
But we often think of geniuses as these almost superhuman figures operating on a totally different level. But Maria's life shows us that even the most extraordinary people are still just people, you know. They feel the same emotions and have the same vulnerabilities as everyone else.
Exactly. And that human side of things that peek into what's going on in a genius's mind and heart, that's what makes her story so relatable and so timeless. You see Maria not just as this amazing artist, but as a woman dealing with the same things we all deal with, finding yourself searching for meaning. It's universal.
And maybe that's why her story still speaks to us, because it reflects our own search for meaning and connection in a world that can often feel chaotic and overwhelming. Her art, with all its raw emotion and passionate intensity, it offers us a glimpse into the depths of what it means to be human, both the beauty and the tragedy.
And it reminds us that even when we face incredible suffering, when life throws those really tough challenges our way, there's still beauty and power in the human spirit that can't be broken. Maria's life, as complicated and tragic as it was, ultimately shows us that strength.
So as we wrap up this look at Maria Callas' life and the whole idea of the mad genius, what are some key insights we've gained from her story?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that genius isn't this simple formula. It's not just about talent or intelligence, it's about passion, resilience, and that willingness to be open and vulnerable to face those darker parts of ourselves.
And to recognize that the same intensity that can fuel that incredible artistry can also make someone more sensitive to pain and suffering.
Yeah.
It's a delicate balance, a constant back and forth between expressing yourself and being vulnerable.
And it's a journey that doesn't always end happily. Maria's life, her rise to fame, and her tragic end, it shows us that striving for artistic greatness can come with a heavy price.
But it also reminds us about the power of art, how it can connect us to something bigger than ourselves, how it can give a voice to our deepest emotions and hopes. And in that way, Maria Callas's legacy continues to inspire and challenge us even today.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great way to sum up our exploration of this extraordinary artist, Maria Callas's story, with all its twists and turns. Ultimately reminds us that life is made up of both light and shadow. And it's in that interplay of opposites that we find our greatest beauty and our deepest truths.
Beautifully put. So thank you for joining us on this journey into the life and legacy of Maria Callas. We hope this has sparked your curiosity and given you something to think about regarding the nature of genius, the power of art, and the enduring spirit of the human soul. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep embracing all the complexities of this beautiful and messy thing we call life.